This video is going to cover Chapter 8, Name Boundary Tools. We're going to talk about the cross-section annotation and the end area volumes. This is group exercise 8.1, creating Route 54 cross-sections. Now this whole name boundary thing is a new concept that they brought forward with Open Roads Designer, and we're going to show you how it works. So let's just go right into the exercise. And what we want to do first is open up the corridors for Route 54 in the Data 8 folder. Now, because of the classroom structure that we do, we have a lot of different data folders that we work in. We want to make sure we're in that Data 8 folder, so we're going to do all the cross sections and labeling stuff. So Data 8, and we want to open up our corridors Route 54 file just to get us in there. Then we're going to create a brand new file named Name Boundary Route 54 XS _ job number. We're going to do that using the mo.2d seed file. So I'm going to copy that so I can paste it in there. So let's go to Open Roads Designer, ORD, and do a file, new. I already had the file open in the background to save time. So I'm in my Data 8 folder. I'm going to paste it in there, the file name. So it's going to be called named _ boundary _ route -54 _ XS _ J5P 3181.dgn. So once you have it named as so, we'll go ahead and hit the OK button and open that blank brand new file. And we'll check in the previous file. Now once it's finished opening, I'll go ahead and hit the Word document, go back to where we were at. Next step is to open the coordinate system. So let's do that. To do the coordinate system, we go to the Utilities tab and Geographic section, and then we're going to pick the icon from File, and we're going to select the terrain in the Data 8 folder. So let's do that. Utilities, Coordinate System, from File option. Verify we're in Data 8, and I'm nowhere near where I need to be, so let me open up the sandbox where I'm working and navigate down to the folder that I'm working in, roadway, and then Data 8. So everybody should have that roadway in Data 8. And I am looking for the terrain file. And the reason we picked the terrain file is because there's only one model in there, the 3D model. And so you don't have to select which model. So it saves you a step. So I'll hit open, and it loads it. We're good to go. So we'll just go ahead, you can see the green check mark down the bottom right as well. It's been defined. So we'll just go ahead and close this out. Back to Word. So that gets us through step 6. And in step 7, we're going to reference in our terrain file, our civil geometry, our corridors for Route 54, and our land boundary file. Okay, let's do that. I've liked that they've added this references tool, or this quick access toolbar here that has some good features to it. So I'm going to hit this references icon and do a tools attach. And I want to bring across those 4 files that we're going to need for our project. The civil geometry, the corridors for Route 54, the land boundary, and the terrain. So what we get is we get our civil geometry with our horizontal alignment to pick from, so we can pick our alignment. We get our corridors, which has all our proposed geometry, all our edge of pavement, shoulders, and conditions. Everything's out there that we want to see in our cross sections. Our land boundary will have our right-of-way lines in it. We want to see them, so we're going to attach that as well. And then we have to have a surface to make it 3D, and make it active, which gives us our 3D model, because just as in SS10 or 4, the terrain has to be active, and anything that's created in those cross sections must be shown in that 3D window. Okay, 3D model. So we got all 4Ds ready to go. I'll hit the OK button, and I will hit OK at the defaults of each one of these dialogues. Do a fit view in the background. I see I've got my geometry. I can close out the reference. Okay. Now I'm going to go over to my Word document again. And that gets us to step 8, which says change the annotation scale to 1 inch equals 50. Okay, and then do a fit view. Step 9, and activate the terrain. Okay, the fit view thing's kind of optional. Use your wheel and roll around however you want to. Let's go over there and do those steps. First thing was change the scale. My scale happens to be down here in the bottom. Yours may be located somewhere else. It's the annotation scale. Change it to 50. You can see the text gets a little smaller. 100. We want to do 50 for our cross section. So just want to bring that scale down. Next thing we want to do is make our terrain active. So we're going to select it and go to the second icon and set it as active terrain model. Very important. We need to have the 3D model and activated so that all the 3D information in that window we can create cross sections from. Okay, it wants us to zoom into the Route 54 corridor. I think we pretty much got it covered. And then let's see. Now creating the name boundary. Now here's a note that's kind of important. We need to enable both the 2D and the 3D view by selecting the F6 key. Or the tool will not create the name boundaries and not the sheet drawing models as well. The sheets may be created at a different time using the name boundary manager. So there's a couple ways of doing this. So we want to open up both those views. So let's do that. Come over into our default window and hit the F6 key. And you can see, since we activated the terrain, it gave us our 3D model on the right. And again, anything that you want to see in your cross sections must be in this window. Everything looks good so far. It says from the Open Roads Modeling Workflow on step 13. Select the Drawing Production tab, then select the Name Boundary tool. So we're going to do that. ORD, Drawing Production tab. We're going to go down to the Name Boundary tab. Now all this is using the Open Roads Modeling Workflow. That's the one that we use for this. So I'm going to hit this and bring it up and go back to the main. This tool, this opens the place name boundary civil plan. And what we want to do is we want to select the place name boundary civil cross section icon, which is that fourth icon on the toolbar. So I'll go do that. Changes the dialog, lots of stuff in there. And then it wants us to choose the drawing seed file, or drawing seed, from the pop-up or from the drop-down menu. And we want the D-size excess sheet 10 scale option. So let's go do that. So we want to pick a drawing seed. We're going to come down to the 10 scale. Click it, it changes our detail scale, and we're good. Once the drawing seed is selected, the default preferences, the offset intervals and clearances will be added to the dialog. And you can see that what it did is it took our 10 scale, gave us a 10 scale, detail scale. The left and right offset is what it comes defaulted wise. So still just like an SS10, we have 140 to the left and 140 to the right. So in essence, what you have is 280 feet to work within your cross sections. You can manipulate that however you want. Okay, just as long as you stay within that 280. Now, unlike the SS10 version, where it will give you an error, out of range error, Open Roads Designer will place your cross sections in there. But what will happen is it'll bleed through your sheet file. So it's still important to keep these offsets, you know, depending on what scale you use. For a 5 scale, you're dealing with 70 left and right, which would be 140 feet overall. And then for the 20 scale, you're looking at 280 left and right and 560 overall. Okay, so the next step is to go out and identify the path element, which we're going to want to pick is that center line for Route 54. So I'm going to come in here, click in that window, and then left click on that Route 54 complex element. Okay, and you can see it's ready to place some name boundaries out here. And these represent pattern lines. Go back to my manual. It told us the data point on the center line of 54, and this tool will progress to picking start station dynamically or by keying. You can move your cursor beyond the start of the alignment, data point to start at the beginning. So what it's saying here is if you went beyond it, it's going to give you the very beginning. You can see it on my cursor here. Go beyond it, it'll give you the very beginning, the start station, which is 602 plus 59.49. Now our alignment does have a station equation in there, and it's very important to realize that as we go along. So for this exercise, we are going to use a 610 plus 00 region 2. And I was talking about that station equation. If you look at 610, it is beyond our equation. So the before the equation is region 1, but you don't have to put anything for region 1. But anything after that is region 2 until you meet another station equation, which would make it region 3 after that. But in this case, it's going to be an R2. So our start station, what we're going to key in is 610 plus 00 space R2. And then we'll go ahead and hit the enter key to lock that in. Okay. And it tells you the R represents the alignment, that the alignment has a station equation applied to it, and the following number represents what region it's in. Except 610 R2 in a blank area, so I filled it in, it's locked in, so I'm going to left click, and you can see it's starting to build these pattern lines in my file. So let me go back to the Word document. The stop station would be 630 00 R2. So we'll go ahead and set that. So you can come in here, and if you were good enough, you can come here and left click on it. But we're just going to key in that value, the stop value. So 630 00 R2. Hit the enter key to lock it in. Now when you move your mouse out, you can see it's got all the name boundaries, all the pattern lines that are going to create name boundaries in our view. I'll go back to here. For this exercise though, we're going to do a left and right offset. We're going to change it. We're going to move it left offset to minus 110 and the right offset to 170 for this exercise. We want less room on the left and more room on the right, which would be the left in your view. But coming down the alignment, since it runs from north to south, we're going to give it less on the left side and more on the right. So let's do that. 110 and 170. So minus 110 on the left. And then I can go to the right. And then 170 positive on the right. Okay, now when I go out on the screen, you can see it dynamically moved. So now where I got some of these limits of construction coming into the elements, I can see them. They've made it within my pattern lines. Viewing the 2D model makes it clear that there is more room needed on the right side of the alignment for the slope limits of construction. So you can see that in a lot of places here. Okay, the interval for this exercise is going to be 100. So key that to 100. Hit the enter key, and you can see it dynamically changes. I haven't accepted all that yet, so it's gonna be okay. But once you accept that last click, all bets are off. Okay, so we've got that figured out. There's the top and bottom clearance. If you want to adjust those, you can after you've looked at your cross sections, see how they are. And then we go down to some other interesting points about this. We have a vertical exaggeration, which we'll leave alone. There's some other stuff down here called the include control points. If you want to see all that, you can check that on. Okay, but you have to turn this pull down on to get that. Oh, here it is. not the event points. The event points is up here, but the include control points would be all your PC, PT, any vertical changes that you have. It would add all these extra cross sections where you have any kind of points there. Backward facing will create boundaries with a backward facing view, and it's used by, I believe, Railroad, so we won't have to worry about that. And then what we want to do is toggle on the create drawing and the show dialog. This will give us an extra dialog that we have more settings to fill out. So once the dialog's been filled out, then we accept or reject. So we're going to go out. It looks like it's set up pretty good. We got 610 to the left, 610 start, 630 stop, 110 to the left, 170 to the right, interval 100. Everything looks good. Elevation datum spacing deals with the text that we get on the left and the right, so it's fine at 5. And then all we have to do is go out and accept. Go ahead and accept in a blank area. And it's going to want one more time. Right now it placed them, but it didn't really place them. It's just showing you where they're going. And then one more time, we'll place the name of the pattern lines for the name boundaries. And then also you'll see over in the 3D window that it places the shapes for your 3D boundaries, showing you exactly what we've done here. And you can see how these name boundaries have come in, and we've adjusted it left and right so we can get more information or less information, however we want to do it. Okay, so once we've done that, it brings us to the next dialog box. And really the only thing in here that you want to really change at all would be the annotation that you're going to place within your cross sections. And really it's not an important thing to do at this point in time. You could do it later. I'll show you how to do it later. But in the instructions, it wants us to go ahead and fill out the annotation group. And when you do that, you just hit the pull down. You go to cross sections, drawing, and in here we're going to do the one with the grid. Access annotation with grid. We've got 4 options here. We have one without grid. Some people like it with no grid at all. We have one with a major grid only. A lot of people like that option. But the width grid gives you our major and minors. And then there's one for the end area volume that we'll talk in another video. Talk about it in another video. So we'll width grid. Go back to my dialog here, and that's the only thing we need to worry about. The scales for the sheet model always come out as 1:1 here, and then you'll have a 1:10 by name boundaries, which you want to see. And then once you're finished, then all you have to do is click the OK button, and we'll let it process. So you can see it's processing in the bottom right. It's going out and creating creating a model, a drawing model for each cross section that's out there from 610 to 630. So every one of them is getting a drawing model. What's going to happen is it's also going to create sheet models. The sheet models are what you think of as your plotting sheets, which you print to PDF, which you print out to the printer. A sheet model contains anywhere from 1 to 3, 4. It just depends on how flat your project is, what the elevations are. So it opens up, and you can see I'm in the sheet model, and it's got the grid work in here, and it's got 2 drawing models referenced in. This is the sheet model. This is what we call sheet model. Okay, the sheet model, the only thing that you want to do in here is edit the title block. That is it. You want to come in here and fill out this information. You don't want to draw in here. You don't want to add any geometry in here. You don't want to reference anything in here. You just don't want to touch anything in here. You just want to leave this alone. This is a sheet model that's created for plotting purposes only. Think of it as AutoCAD's paper space model space. It's the same thing. You got your paper space. That's what this basically is. They call it a sheet model. Okay, and I can see that there's 2 drawing models that's been referenced in, and it opened me up at 630, the very last sheet model that it created. Okay, go back to this, and it's telling us how we can operate going through the different models. Okay, so step 28 says the open model option from the previous dialog. Check checked on, we'll open up a cross-section drawing or a sheet model after processing. Okay, so what is shown here is how we can navigate through the different views. Okay, so let me go do that real quick and show you that. So down here in the bottom left, we have our views, our view groups. Okay, and when you click it, all those cross sections got created in this DGN file. Okay, so if I go to the top, I can see there's a default, and that's your 2D window, a default 3D, that's your 3D models, and then a multi-model view, which is very important. That's how you create the cross sections. You have to have both of those views open, the 2D and the 3D, and that's what that is. It's a multi-model of a 2D and your 3D, which we used before we created these sheets. And then you'll come down and you'll see these white pieces of paper with a little title block to it. That's representing a sheet model. You also see the word sheet somewhere in there. Those are sheet models. So if I click on one, let's say if I go to 610, I click on it, it's going to open up 610, and this is what the first one looks like. It's our first cross section, 611, and so on and so forth. So it fit 2 in here as well. Now if I want to see the drawing model, I go to these gray piece of paper, these little icons with gray to them. Okay, those are the drawing models. This is where we would do our work. So if I go out to 610, well, let's do 611. And I select it. It's going to have a gray background. It's going to be gray. It's not going to be black. The black background represents a default model. And then the gray represents the drawing model. And then the white, as you've seen in the previous view, represents a sheet model. So in here, station 611, you can see we've got all our text in here. Got our station elevation, automatically annotates. Got our slopes on here. Looks good. And that is an automatic annotation, which is really cool. So let's go back to the manual and see what we want to talk about next. Okay, so what it's saying here is we can go back to that multi-model view and look at what we have in there. We have some pattern lines, and then we have our shapes out there. Okay, so let's go back to that multi-model view, and that's the only way you get those two views. Let's come down here and go to multi-model view. When I bring it up, you can see that again we have our pattern lines on the left. Each one of these name boundary pattern lines represent where a cross section is created. Okay, and it tells you this one's 616. That's 00R2. The same with the 3D window. You can select one of these and you get the heads up for it, and it'll tell you what station you're at. Okay, now one thing that's kind of a nuisance is that they're filled shapes. You can't see through them. So if you're wanting to look in this 3D model and rotate it around and stuff and look through it, what you'd have to do is come over to this View Attributes pull down and then go down to the field on the right side, all the way at the bottom, near the bottom. It's called Transparency. Just select that, and the transparency has been set up so that we can see through it, so you can see your project a little better. On the left side, I'm going to go back over here and make my View 1 active. You'll see that we've got our handles and our template drops, and we've got all kinds of information here. If you didn't want to see them, or if you didn't see the pattern lines as you placed them out, you want to verify that constructions is on. If the constructions are off, you don't see any pattern lines. And that's a big tip. Sometimes people create them and they don't have their constructions on in that file. For some reason they're off. But if you turn them back on, you're good to go. Okay. So constructions. That's how you see the name boundaries. Let's go back to the Word document. And it talks about it in the next step. Your attributes, constructions, and transparencies. Now viewing this, the cross-section drawing models and sheet models, again, you just go down to the bottom left and you can navigate. So again, if I go back down here to the multi-model views, I can go see a drawing model for whatever section I'm worried about. Maybe it's 618. I select it and I can see all that information in there. So I'm going to look, you can see my supers are applied. I've got my slopes. Good to go. If I want to see a sheet model, I select a sheet model, it brings it into my view. Again, the sheet models are white, and you don't want to place geometry, text, you don't want to measure in here, you don't want to do anything. These are just sheets for plotting. And you also notice where ramp 4 comes into play, there's a retaining wall in the exercise that we placed earlier that comes into here. So since we only did 54, that's all we see, and that's all it's going to plot. Okay. And that brings us to the end of the exercise, which is also the end of the video.